Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Rats on Film, the show where a bunch of film rats talk about and rank movies. To end the show, I have assembled the film rats to talk about Captain America. On the show with me today, I have Jordan.
Aye, Captain.
Tristan.
On your left.
And I'm your host, Xander. Welcome to the show, everybody. Nice one. I was expecting one of you to do that.
Yeah, if Jordan did it, I was gonna be.
I'm glad you did.
I didn't know what I was gonna do.
It's time. The MCU is upon the film rats. We've long debated how we were going to tackle this on the show. A lot of the film rats are big MCU fans. I think regardless of how you feel about it, it's a huge part of the movie world over the last decade, even more now. And so it was, we talked a lot about how the best way to tackle it was, and we ultimately decided that we were going to do smaller groups, but in the effort of making a larger MCU ranking. And so since Captain America 4 just came out, we're recording this a little bit after it came out, and he is the first Avenger, we thought it was appropriate to start with him.
Yeah, sums it up.
Yeah, it was that was beautifully said. And I like that you said we decided when really it was you. You made the decision. We may be talking about Captain America and freedom.
No, the film rats are free. It was a democratic rat process.
If there's one thing you can know about rats, you need to know they're democratic.
Dude, Democrat has rat right in the name.
It's true, right there in the middle. Right? Did I cut that? If that's wrong,
I mean, I don't know the exact amount.
I don't know. I said it and then I go, oh shit, I forgot how to spell it.
Yeah, democratic.
Yeah.
Keep it all in.
All right, so you guys want to talk about Captain America?
Yeah,
let's do
sure. It's not my bad spelling.
All right, so starting off, Captain America, the First Avenger, 2011. Very early MCU stuff. Tristan, we saw this in theaters together, right?
Yes? Question mark?
I think we did.
I feel like we
did.
That was a long time ago, man.
It was a long time ago.
That was a while ago, but that sounds right. I feel like we saw a lot of the early MCU movies together.
Yeah, it's I feel like until Avengers 1, it wasn't even really clear to me that there was this like larger thing going on.
Yeah, I remember watching this movie, and in my brain as a kid, I kind of put it with like the X-Men movies. It was just like each Super or Spider-Man, like it was just another superhero movie.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like a separate thing yet.
And then also just the risk of, they basically, outside of Iron Man, they cast, and the incredible 2008 Hulk movie, there were relatively small names like Chris Evans, not a big actor at that point.
No.
So yeah, it was a big risk.
I think what they did a lot in the early movies is they maybe cast a less well-known lead and then a big actor for the antagonist. Like you've got Hugo Weaving. Obviously, he can play a good villain. And I think that the performances like across the board, I mean, Tommy Lee Jones, Stanley Tucci, Haley Atwell, they all do a really good job propping this movie up. And I think they are what carries the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look years in the future, they're probably glad that they cast Sebastian Stan back then too, because he's also like popping off as an actor now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about him a little bit more later, but I do think that the fact that they were able to cast somebody to do Bucky so well in this movie, but then also be able to play the Winter Soldier later on down the road is, I mean, credit to the casting team on that one.
Credit to casting Chris Evans also, because in other movies outside the MCU, I almost exclusively only like Chris Evans when he plays a dick. And he's just really good as Cap, though. Like, it's weird. He's really good as Captain America and then also good at being a villain. But
he can either be the most wholesome man ever or just like such a douchebag.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's one of the greatest things about First Avenger is just Chris Evans really embodying who Steve Rogers is, especially pre-serum. You just see him doing all of the things that, we would come to see Captain America do later, and he's doing them as the scrawny, asthmatic kid from Brooklyn. As Stanley Tucci's Dr. Erskine says, you're a good man, stay a good man. And I feel like Chris Evans throughout his time as Captain America just did that so well.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, Captain America, along with Iron Man, are really the heart of the first three phases of the MCU. And I do think that that does all get established in this movie with like what you're saying, Tristan, the core of his character and the way that Chris Evans is able to embody that ideal of just trying to stand up to bullies and be a good person and do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think there's something so fundamental to his character that he's based in World War II because there was such a clear right and wrong, and you can really get behind anyone who just wants to like punch a Nazi, obviously, or punch Hitler. I think he does in the comics, right? But I think that's something that's like a bit more of a struggle now with like the modern Captain America, is that I think the basing him at a time when there was like such a clear right and wrong, it gives a good backbone to his character, because then he's a fish out of water in the 2000s where he still has that moral, character from World War II.
Yeah, it's funny too, you bring up the setting in World War II. I think that in the early MCU movies, kind of across the board, they're all definitely a little bit more all over the place. This doesn't really feel like Iron Man 1. It is a period piece. It is a war movie. You've got like a little World War II song, the Star Spangled Man with a Plan, over this like really cheesy montage of him like marching, and it's got a unique charm to it, which I think is cool.
Like you said, it's a period piece, and it feels very much like that. Like you're back in the 1940s, like experiencing this horrific war, but through the lens of a superhero who is being able to sing a show tune for you and sell bullets.
Yeah, I love that it's a period piece. I mean, I love period pieces in general most of the time, but it distinguishes it from other superhero movies. And even when they've tried to kind of do period pieces and later on, like Captain Marvel's like a 90s period piece, I don't think it's as successful as this one. I think this one kind of understood what it was more so than others. I don't know.
No, I do also want to say about this one, going back to it after a little while, visually is a little all over the place.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The digital visuals,
correct.
I think the practical visuals actually are amazing.
Super
I think
cool.
They are pretty grounded and consistent.
Love the costume. I think it's great. It's a goofy costume. I get it. Bringing it to live action is weird. I think it works really well. I like it for the movie. I think Red Skull looks great. The makeup effects that they did for him are incredible. I think Lil Steve looks good. It's a mix of a stand-in with a head replacement versus some forced perspective stuff. I like it. Most of the time it looks really good. But yeah, some of like the bigger set piece stuff in this one is a little yucky.
Yeah. Every time he jumps, it feels very... It has that like X-Men feeling whenever like Beast or they would jump, they're very clearly on a wire, and they're just like
anti-gravity.
Yeah, they're floating unnaturally for a period of time where they're just like kicking their legs, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, the shield mechanics are a bit inconsistent.
The shield's crazy. Yeah. I kind of love it, but it's crazy. But yeah, I think this is a fun one. It's definitely, I think it set the mark a little bit on the MCU where it was like, oh, there's a little bit of confidence that maybe they can, it's not just Iron Man that's good.
Yeah, this is the movie that actually got me interested in Avengers. It wasn't Iron Man, which I think it was for most people, but I don't remember if I even saw Iron Man before I saw this movie or if I went back and then watched them for Avengers, but this was the one that like made me have interest in the MCU.
All right, so we'll start Cap 1 on the top. Next up on the list, Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, 2014.
Enter the Russo brothers.
Yeah, that is a big deal for the MCU, even to this day. Yep. We thought they were done. They're back.
They're back. Can't keep a good Russo down. Oh, this movie. So good. So good. This is I feel like where the MCU really hit its stride, because 2014 was this movie, Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy. And I feel like, yes, they had the big success of Avengers, then followed that up with Iron Man 3, and then they kind of hit a low with Thor: The Dark World. And then this is where they hit their stride up until the end of Endgame, I think. This movie was so good, and I still think it is like the pinnacle of what the MCU can be.
Yeah, I do think that maybe this is the first genre movie in the MCU. Obviously, the genre across the board tends to be superhero movies, but I think that this is the first one where it's like, it's a superhero movie, but it's also a spy thriller.
Interesting. I've never thought about it like that. But I would say the first Avenger is also like a war movie.
Yeah,
which is its own
honestly,
type of movie.
honestly, that is absolutely true. So Captain America is just the only one doing it in the beginning. There's subgenres that kind of get brought up in them, and I think that this one is definitely a spy thriller as much as it is a superhero movie. I mean, there's secret hard drives that they're decoding in stores. They're putting on baseball caps so no one recognizes them.
That's the start of that MCU trend as well, where they just the world famous superheroes put on a baseball hat and no one recognizes them.
Hey, dude, Tom Cruise does it and he gets away with it. He goes to the theater all the time. Yeah, I think this movie rules. I think this is a really, really solid sequel. I think it's a good way to, Jordan, you touched on this already, bring him into the modern world and have this character with his very specific moral compass and his very specific life experience deal with the nuance of sort of modern warfare and the modern politics and immediately butt heads with that, but also while being a military man and a symbol for America and then not at all agreeing with the ideals that it's pursuing, I think is a really interesting conflict.
Yeah, I would agree. I also just think it's such a fascinating idea to have your best friend be a villain who's brainwashed. I mean, it's the heart of the Cap character, right? It's like Bucky throughout all of it, but like
he's obsessed with this guy, man.
Yeah, exactly. But like to have your best
obsessed?
friend be brainwashed and him be as strong as you, but in the opposite direction, is just really fun to watch.
And it also just helps create that real emotional core of the movie. Us, the viewers, we know that's Bucky, and we're waiting for Steve to figure it out. And when he finally does and they start recognizing each other, it's very heart-wrenching. It really just sets the stage for what Steve kind of does for like the next movie and a half. He thought his entire world was over when he woke up 70 years after World War II. And then he finds out the one person that's been there for him his entire life is still alive on the opposite end of the moral compass. Is just has to be so heart-wrenching. And like, I understand why Steve is so conflicted and dedicated to trying to help Bucky.
I think one of the things that I love about this movie as well is that in this era of the MCU, I think there's a great level of integration that's happening where I love the Black Widow inclusion in this movie. I think the two of them team well together. They have a fun, flirty, make fun of dynamic. And then just the context of the MCU of S.H.I.E.L.D. is Hydra. It's a great twist for the overall universe and recontextualizes everything going forward. But it also makes so much sense to do in a Cap movie and have that be his conflict that he's dealing with.
Speaking of the Black Widow Cap dynamic, I just think this movie is the first one where an Avenger kind of has their own Avengers, like within their own little group. Like I love Falcon in this movie, is great. And like Cap kind of gets his own team. And I think that's so important to his character in the whole MCU moving forward, but also just his character in this one where like he isn't alone. Like he starts to have friends in like his own world. The dynamic between him and Black Widow, the dynamic between him and Sam, like it's a good, his good repertoire. And then later with Bucky, like those characters interacting with Bucky, it creates like a really good character flow for the universe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do really like Sam's introduction in this one. I think it's a nice character to relate to Steve and for them to work together and connect because they both are trying to do their best to help other people. And I think that they meet each other on a good level.
Comes back to that being a good man. You can tell very early on from Sam.
All right. How would you guys rank Cap 2 versus Cap 1?
It's got to be number one right now. It's got to be.
I think I like Cap 1 more.
Hot take, Jordan.
There's a hot take you were talking about.
But I think Cap 2 is a better movie. I think it's just the sentimental value of Cap 1 for me.
I'm with you, Tristan. I'm sorry, Jordan.
That's okay. I figured I would get outvoted on that one.
Your hot take has been quenched. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the
Some
Winter
people
Soldier.
say Winter Soldier is the best MCU movie. So
yeah, I think it is regarded as one of the best ones.
Some people are on this podcast that say that.
Hey, we'll see what the rats say.
Yeah.
For now, it's the top of the list. All right, next up, Captain America: Civil War 2016.
Avengers 2.5.
First of all, I was about to say, I'm right there with you, dude. First of all, this is barely a Captain America movie. It really is an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
I do think it rules, but calling it a Captain America movie is a little bit silly. I get that he is the catalyst and sort of like the core of the movie, but there's a lot going on here that is not Captain America specific.
Yeah.
But it's titled Captain America, so we're doing it on the Captain America episode.
I would say it's almost as much as an Iron Man movie, if not almost more so, because I feel like Tony has almost more of a character arc where he's very, we got to sign the accords, and then he's realizing he's wrong, and then he's back to like, I don't like Steve because he always thinks he's so right, and now I'm kind of proven right in that he's not this perfect guy.
All right, so let's do this really quick off the top. Team Cap or Team Iron Man?
Team Cap.
So I'm Team Iron Man asterisk because
Tony wasn't an asterisk in 2016, buddy.
He really loses me at the end. I think the thing for me about the movie, and I think this is why the movie is good, the setup of it is very logical and makes sense coming out of Avengers 2, Avengers Age of Ultron. They are suffering the repercussions of what happens there. Why Steve frustrates me in this movie is because I don't even disagree with his sentiments of like the government intervention might be a negative. What is frustrating is that he refuses to even discuss or compromise. He's just like, no, which is just not helpful in the situation.
Yeah, but that's how you construct a good story, right?
For sure. It makes for a great screenplay.
Flaws,
right.
But also be valid.
And he is completely blinded by Bucky. And again, not even wrongfully so. I don't even disagree with him. But he really just fucks everybody else over for the sake of Bucky and does nothing to help the situation that is put upon them because a government is mad that they've inadvertently killed people, even though they were trying to do the right thing.
But Iron Man's pure rage against Bucky, even though he knows he was brainwashed, is also crazy.
That's
like he literally knows that he is brainwashed.
That's
like,
why I said asterisk. That's the asterisk. I'm with you for sure.
He just goes too hard.
He should know better.
He knows that
he's a brainwashed man.
Like it literally happened to Hawkeye in Avengers 1. Like
it low-key makes more sense
people have had
for him to beat the shit out of Steve for lying to him than it does to attack Bucky, because Bucky had no control. Steve chose to lie to him.
Yeah.
Iron Man's coming completely from a place of guilt in this movie, which doesn't necessarily make him right, but he's trying to do the right thing. But
he's not doing it for the right reasons. Like the guilt that he has is not the right guilt. He has it from one person. But who came and called him out, though. He didn't have the guilt before the person called him out. But that's like not the right reason. He's only mad because he got caught.
But you could be recontextualized in your feelings, right? You can have new information presented to you and be like, oh, I didn't think about the innocent people that got hurt, what we were doing. We should maybe figure out how to be better.
How do you not think about
that? And then Steve Rogers goes, nah.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like deciding to make such a drastic change just because you feel guilty of creating a killer android isn't a great catalyst to come out with everyone. It's like, we got to do it. This is why we have to do it, because we let people die. And it's like, if we didn't do anything, everyone dies. So I don't know. It does set up a nice back and forth between them. I can see both sides, but I do think, like you said, Cap is very stubborn, but there's at least a point where he was willing to relent, where I don't feel like Tony ever really was.
Either way, whatever side of it you fall on, I do think it is a great conflict between two characters they're kind of always at odds with each other in the MCU in interesting ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes it interesting. And that's what makes them such good dual leads of the MCU.
Yeah, we got to talk about it. This movie introduced two huge Marvel characters in Black Panther, and then the one that that shocked the world after, I think it was that second trailer dropped, Spider-Man.
Great casting for both of them. Great introductions to both of them. I think they're both really great parts of the film. Both on Team Iron Man too, just so you guys know.
Yeah, whatever. They didn't do the Civil War comic right.
Captain America has
Spider-Man went back to the
He's supposed to flip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I flip-flop looking at it retrospectively whether or not I would have preferred to have seen either of them in their own movie first, but I don't know. I don't think I would. I think the introduction is enough since both of them got their own movies anyway.
I think they both have one really great scene. I mean, the airport fight it's kind of stupid. It's kind of fun. There's some good moments. I love the Giant Man moment. I think it's great. Paul Rudd's great in it. But it is a little bit like, why are they fighting each other? Like it's escalated a little too far, and what's even the point of the fight?
Yeah.
But I think the introduction scene of Spider-Man, of Peter, when he talks to Tony in his bedroom and he's explaining that if you can do the things that I can do and you don't, and bad things happen, then it's on you. And you kind of get that little bit of his philosophy of why he's a hero, and that's what makes Tony go, okay, this kid's ready. I love that scene. And I also think the end with T'Challa and Zemo outside the bunker, where T'Challa kind of understands finally that vengeance has basically just consumed everybody, and it's not constructive and it's not getting anybody what they want. I think that's also a great scene.
I agree with you. I was going to mention Black Panther has a very interesting arc where he is very much consumed by vengeance and will do anything to get to Bucky. And like you said, that ending scene with Zemo, it really mirrors what all of the Avengers are going through, of just this. They're all fueled with rage and hate and vengeance, and they don't care who they hurt.
I think it's really good introductions of both characters. I think that the Tony Peter dynamic that they set up in this movie is like one of the strongest relationships through Tony's death. It's interesting. I mean, it's not typical. It's not something we've really seen with Spider-Man before, but I think without this movie and the introduction and the comedy between him, like Tony and Aunt May, like there's a lot of good, there's just a lot of good comedy. There's a lot of good parental Tony, I guess, that you get in this movie because of that continues later on in the story. And I think it's a good introduction of Spider-Man, but also a good characterization of Tony, especially since he is like being kind of a hard ass in this movie, and to have that levity with Peter is good. Before
we get into the next one, Sam and Bucky dynamic in this movie is great.
It's so good.
The "can you move your seat" is one of my favorite just small MCU moments ever. I just think it's so great.
Yeah.
These two being like competing to be Steve's best friend is a really funny dynamic. And the way that they grew their relationship with each other, I think is one of the cooler arcs that they had between two characters.
Talking about the last one versus this one, I think the character team up in the last one, all the characters feel like they're supposed to be together. And in this one, while I do like the introduction of T'Challa and Peter, it's like too many cooks a little bit. Like, why is Ant-Man there? Like, why do we need him?
It's a bit for the novelty. Like, the airport fight's a little bit just like, hey, look at all the guys we got.
Yeah. And it works. Like, there are some funny moments between like Peter Parker and Winter Soldier and Falcon. Like, there's some good bits with like random characters going together. I love the bits with Peter and Captain America. There are some really good moments that I guess help set up the next Avengers movie, and I get why these characters needed to get to know each other a little bit, but like, what is Vision doing? Like, Vision could also end all of them. Wanda and Vision could do literally so much damage in seconds, and they don't. Like, it's just kind of silly, but it is fun, and it is always fun to see them fight each other on screen. So this was like the first time that we really got a lot of characters on screen at once, so that's cool.
All right, where do you guys want to put this one on the list?
I could see it at 2.
You're going 2?
I'll go
Jordan?
2.
This is number 1 for me.
Number 1 for you?
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Oh, okay.
The Winter Soldier is definitely a better, more contained movie, start to finish plot. But I do love the larger team up stuff. Like, I am a fan of it, and I think that is sort of the fun of the MCU.
Yeah, that's why it's so high for me, because I think this is what, like Tristan was saying, that in the last movie, like the MCU really got its stride. And I think this is when the MCU was just like at its all-time like popcorn movie high. And that's kind of just what I want from them. Is it the best movie ever made? No. Is it the best screenplay ever made? No. But it's so much fun. And there's enough that grounds it as a good movie that it doesn't just feel like a Deadpool and Wolverine to me, where like it's just like throwing fan service at my face. There's enough that I think the characters all have like their own believable arcs, but also it's just fun, and it's a bunch of superheroes doing what superheroes do. So
yeah, okay, I'll put this above.
I didn't need to convince you.
Yeah, she got me.
She gotcha.
She got me.
I'm not upset with that. Well, Civil War is peak MCU. Like, it's fully in its stride, and you can't go wrong, I think, with either Winter Soldier or Civil War being number one. They're both very good. Whenever I rewatch Civil War, it's always one of those movies where it's a pretty long movie. It's like 2.5 hours, but it doesn't feel like it. It goes by really quick in a good way. And you're like, oh, I wish there was more. So seeing it at number one is a good call.
All right, last up on the list, a recent release, Captain America Brave New World, 2025. Really quick, just since this is vaguely new. Spoiler alert, we're talking fully about the movie. If you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen to this part. You can skip to the end.
It feels like such a big jump to go from Civil War to this movie, because not only did we have Infinity War and Endgame, but we also had Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, so that's a good point. We're not going to do the shows for this MCU ranking at this time. For now, it's Rats on Film, so we're sticking to the films. Maybe we'll revisit later.
It is just fascinating to see the jump from like Cap 1 to Cap 2. It kind of feels like a sequel, and then Cap 2 to Cap 3. You're like, oh, yeah, Avengers happened in between, Ultron happened
kind of
in
like
between,
an Avengers sequel.
But it's still like a progression where this is a leap. This is not a natural progression from Civil War to Brave New World. Like, this is a full leap.
Well, and it's also not a progression of Captain America, because it's really a Hulk sequel, just with a Captain America title.
They very clearly wanted to make a sequel to the 2008 Hulk, and they're like, well, we're gonna do it with Captain America. And you're like, okay, sure. This movie feels like almost like a reset for Captain America, because it's a new Captain America. It's Sam. He's trying to kind of find his footing as Captain America. Granted, you see that a lot in the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. That's kind of one of my issues. They kind of retread that very familiar territory. I feel like it doesn't work as well in this compared to the show.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I actually really like Sam as Captain America. I think Anthony Mackie's a compelling lead. He's funny, he's charismatic. And I think that Steve gives Sam the shield because he recognizes that Sam is like him in that he's a good person trying to do the right thing. And I think something that's so frustrating is they actually have such rich story potential they deal a lot with race and identity and expectation, and they talk a lot about it in this movie, where like Sam has a little monologue where he's like, I have a lot of pressure on me every time I pick up that shield, but I don't see it in the movie. They didn't create a scenario that put him up against any of that stuff. And I wish that they were brave enough to actually use some of the things they talk about as a conflict for the Sam Wilson Captain America.
I mean, Sam doesn't have a character arc in this movie at all.
No.
That's a huge problem, to be a main character of a movie and you don't have an arc. Like,
he starts as a good person trying to do the right thing, and he ends as a good person.
He also just doesn't change, though. Like, he literally doesn't change at all. His friends are still his friends. His enemies are still his enemies. Like, he just talks to Harrison Ford. Like, that's literally the only thing that happens. But his morals don't change. He doesn't change in any way. Like, literally in any way. He's not stronger. He's not weaker at the end. Like, nothing happens to him.
And it's, again, like the Incredible Hulk sequel. The Harrison Ford character, Thaddeus Ross, previously played by William Hurt, he doesn't have a problem specifically with Sam Wilson. Like, they try and act like he does, but they've barely spoken. Yeah, I know he locked him up in jail, but it wasn't personal against Sam Wilson. It was like the whole gang that helped Cap in Civil War. He has a beef with Hulk. So the idea of like this ultimate forgiveness at the end and calming him down or whatever, there's no weight to that with Sam, because they don't have a history that is significant.
Yeah, and to Tristan's point about retreading the same idea that the show does, I think the show, well, I don't think it executes everything perfectly, but I think the show has a bit more of an interesting plot with what's his name? Wyatt Russell's character.
U.S.
John
agent.
Walker.
Yeah, John Walker. Like, I think that dynamic and like the conflict between Sam grappling with whether or not he's even a good enough person to take Steve's mantle versus being the right person to take America's mantle, because obviously there are like people in America who are telling him he's not good enough just because he's black. And he's also dealing with the fact that he doesn't even know if he's a good enough person to be the person Steve chose. Like, it's just so much more interesting than anything we see in this movie with Sam's character.
Yeah. Well, and one of the most interesting parts to come out of that show that makes its way into this movie and then goes
Isaiah
nowhere
Bradley.
is Isaiah Bradley. Right. I think what an interesting character, just used and abused by the government and never given any recognition. And then you've got Sam, who's taking on that mantle, knowing that that's how this could go for him and choosing to do it in spite of that. And then having that character be his mentor and kind of be like, dude, you're kind of trusting the wrong people, but that not go anywhere.
A lot of, like you said, a lot of potential. And there's a really compelling story underneath, like another layer deeper. They go another layer deeper. And there's a really interesting story of how Sam has to deal with everything of being a black man, you know, and being the face of America and the face of like the superhero community at this point. There's so much that I wish they would have just pushed the envelope a little bit further to really drive home. And I think it could have been a really great addition post Endgame.
I will say, I like Anthony Mackie in the movie. I think that he working with what he's given, he does a good job. He's a compelling lead. I like Joaquin Torres, the Danny Ramirez. I think he does a good job. He kind of just slots in as that same archetype as what Falcon was to Steve.
See, I have a problem with, and I also
go ahead.
I love the Joaquin character. I think he's so funny and charming, but this is a Marvel problem in general, and I am so frustrated with them changing every character into a quirky, funny guy.
Totally fair.
But Sam works so well with Steve because Steve is so serious. Like, he needs someone to be like, come on, dude, cut it out. Like,
guy.
You're running miles around me, like, LOL. Like, there's a joke right in this scene because Steve is so serious. But when Sam's already like that, you need a different
type of character.
Yeah, like, you can't just, every character can't be quippy. Like, not every character is Peter Quill, but now every character is Peter Quill, and it just drives me crazy.
And going back to Falcon and Winter Soldier, that's another reason that show works for me so well, is because it has Bucky as the foil to Sam's like jokiness. Bucky is filling in as Steve at that point. He's a super soldier who's very serious, and the dynamic between the two in that show is great, and it feels a little, you miss it in this movie.
I'm also like, I'll fully admit, I'm just not the audience for this movie because I'm not a huge fan of the Hulk movie, and I think the Tim Blake Nelson character is useless to me.
You don't like the leader?
I just like, I don't
like his little bubble brain?
I don't care, and I honestly don't care about Red Hulk. I know a lot of like comic people are really excited for Red Hulk, but like, I just don't care. And I also,
he's so hot though.
But
literally.
Like temperature wise.
I was like Harrison Ford, sure, but
I mean, that is true.
But also like the way that like Anthony Mackie's character Sam has not taken the super soldier serum, and he's fighting Red Hulk with wings, and then his wing breaks and he just gets him to stop by being like, look at the flowers from your daughter, even though he said that 10 minutes ago and it didn't work. He just does it again, and then that's the climax of the movie. It just did not work for me.
I will say that sequence where they're flying around the really cool Celestial from Eternals.
We've been waiting to know what they were doing with that.
Yeah, adamantium, baby. I thought that sequence was probably the best action sequence
I agree.
in the movie.
It looks good. It's cool.
Really cool. There was really clever use of Sam's Captain America's wing, like using his wings as he's flying, like he surfs on that missile. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was cool. Putting the shield behind him to block is cool.
Yeah, there are cool moments in that.
Some of the grounded action I thought was pretty cool too. Like, I liked hiding behind the car door doing that shot. Like, it looks pretty good.
That's one of the best scenes in the movie is when they take away his stupid vibranium wings that aren't what makes him him.
Yeah.
They make him generic and just like anybody else, and he actually is using like his intelligence and his craftiness to beat Sidewinder. I love that scene a lot. I think it's really good.
Yeah, just a little bit too much going on.
Yeah,
I think, but also not enough going on.
I honestly think this is a fine movie. Like, I think the plot makes sense, A to B. You watch it. There's some interesting action scenes, and there's some funny quips throughout it. But it definitely lacks. We said earlier that Captain America's sort of the heart of the first big saga of the MCU, one of the hearts of it, and this definitely lacks that.
I mean, part of it to me is that it is a Hulk sequel with Captain America. Like, they should have just done a Captain America character. It's unfair to Sam's Captain America though, in my mind, just because it's not his movie. Like, it's not for him.
I mean, yeah, Harrison Ford gets the character arc in the movie. Sam doesn't really have that. The fact that the leader's power is probabilities is insane. They said it a lot of times, and I'm just like, what does that even mean?
I didn't care for his design. I feel like they should have just went with the traditional leader look and not the lumpy oatmeal head.
Dude, the lumpy head is crazy.
It's so weird. You have a bowl of cereal with that.
I kind of like the action scene in his little cell. Like, I kind of like when they go in and they just fight all his little minions. I think it actually looks pretty good.
The grounded stuff works really well.
The hand-to-hand combat, but that's
with the shield.
That's what Sam needs, because that's who he
Yes.
is. He's literally a guy with wings. Like, he doesn't have a superpower. Like, he actually is just a guy with wings. He's just skilled.
All right, so I think easy decision. Where are we putting Brave New World?
Unfortunately, I think it has to be in fourth.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not as good as the other ones.
I will say, if this is the start of them returning to form, I think it's a good start. It really does feel like almost like a MCU reset in a sense. This feels very akin to early MCU movies for me. But there are moments where you're like, okay, I can really see this going somewhere. And I feel like that was a lot of the early MCU stuff.
Yeah, I think it's the worst Captain America movie, but it's definitely better than like Quantumania or the Marvels.
Yo, spoilers. All right, so the Rats on Film, objectively in our opinion, official ranking for the Captain America movies, but also this will be our ongoing list for the MCU as a whole, starting from the bottom. Captain America Brave New World, Captain America The First Avenger, Captain America The Winter Soldier, and the big cheese, Captain America Civil War.
Whoa.
So we will, at various points, sometimes to coincide with new movie releases, sometimes just because we feel like it, keep going through some of the other series or characters or groupings that make sense, and we will add on to this existing list for it.
I think it'll be really interesting to see where this character goes.
Yeah.
Just because I think when the first one came out, we lived in a very different country than when we lived the one we live in now. And the movie industry is different. The MCU is different. So I'm just really curious to see.
Anthony Mackie said 10 more years.
10 more years?
That's what he said.
Wow. Good for him.
It's a new saga. It's a new MCU. We will see how everything shakes out. All right. Thanks for listening to Rats on Film, everybody. Be sure to tell a friend about the show. We're a bunch of little rats, talk about and rank movies. Rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice. And follow us on social media, Rats on Film Pod. We'll post this list and we'll be updating it on Letterboxd as we go through the MCU. So you can follow us there. And we will be back in 2 weeks to talk about more movies. And we'll be back at some point to talk about more MCU movies.
Bye.